And welcome everybody to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always, and we have got a very exciting show for you today. We're going to be talking all about navigating the claims process, which if you've got an upcoming PCS, it's going to be information that you're going to know to help set you up for success from the very beginning. Before we get into all of that, just want to remind folks that are preparing to do a PPM, personally procured move, also formerly known as the Diddy move, you do need to set your move up on DPS as a PPM. You cannot just think I'll go get my weight tickets, turn them into the transportation office afterwards. You do need to set it up beforehand. There is some counseling and other paperwork involved in that. So don't, just think you can turn it in afterwards. You run the risk of not being paid your incentive pay if you do that. So it's very important that you get that set up prior to once you get your official orders. So we're going to jump right into today. I'm very excited. I've got two folks here joining us today from the moving industry side to help share some more information about the claims process to help us all be prepared for what it is that we need to know. So JD and Kira, thank you both for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules to help share this information with us. Let me start with you, JD. If you can just take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is JD Reese. I started working for TMM back at the beginning of January of this year. Just recently retired from the Air Force, 25 years as an enlisted guy, and then in the Air Force JAG Corps, and then 14 years as the director of the Air Force Claims Service Center, which is located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. My family and I had done 11 PCS moves, drug my wife and 3 daughters all around the world. And actually, my youngest daughter, Becky, she is a Air Force spouse over at Aviano Air Base in Italy. And she may be watching right now, so I have to watch what I say.
Well, thank you for joining us. And Kira, if you can take a moment and tell us about yourself as well.
Yes, I have been working in the claims arena for the Institute at TMM for about 14 years now. I've done all the different roles. I'm now the director of claims there, so my oversight is more of the claims team, but I have been an adjudicator in the past as well, so I've handled it all. And tried to be a big part of an advocate for the service members, but also for, DPS improvements and efficiencies so that we can get the service members taken care of as quickly as possible.
Oh, thank you for joining us today. And we've got a few people watching with us. Tim, also from the moving industry. Good to have you with us here, Tim. So we're going to jump right into what we want to talk about today, because I know I've got a lot of questions. I'm sure our viewers are probably going to have some questions of their own as well. So first, let's start with what are the different types of claims that customers can file and the differences between them. There's, the essential, quick, regular claims, the inconvenience claims. So can one of you walk through what the different claims are and when they would be used?
Sure. So there are about 4 major types, as you just kind of listed. So quick claims are going to be for your minor loss and damage discovered at time of delivery. That is currently up to $1,000, but in 2022, that will after pickups after May 15th, 2022, that will be going up to $1,500, which is great. It just allows for a more rapid settlement between the TSP and the customer. Essential items claims are going to be for your essential items, anything medically necessary needed for refrigeration, washers and dryers, or mattresses. So those settlements need to be notified to the TSP within 7 days of your delivery date. And then within 2 days, you'll be counseled either for a temporary replacement or a full replacement, just depending on the severity of the damage or the loss. Your regular claims are going to be your DPS claims. That's going to be kind of everything else outside of those 2 items as it relates to your actual household goods damage. And then your inconvenience claims aren't for your damages. They are for a shipment being either missed pickup, missed RDD, missed scheduled delivery, or if it falls outside of the window of requirement to deliver once out of SIT. Those are for out-of-pocket expenses that you might incur There are some limitations there, so certainly make sure that you are being counseled by your customer service rep or a claims representative if you have any questions. And there is now an option for a 7-day maximum per diem rate. So depending on the number of days your shipment is going to be late, you can do a receipt free, but so that everybody is aware, that is for the member only. So if you are traveling with a family and those expenses are going to exceed that, do make sure that you are still keeping all of your receipts, because it's one or the other. So everything either needs to be documented by receipts, or you can do the receipt free option.
No, thank you for that. Lots of good information. It's also important to note for the inconvenience claim too, that the delay has to be something that was within the TSP's control, right? So like if a hurricane is coming through and you have to delay, you're not eligible then because the TSP can't control the hurricane. We saw some delays last year where like especially with our express shipment, our UAB unaccompanied baggage shipments, that they were held up because of AMC, and you're not eligible for an inconvenience claim then because that's outside of the TSP's control of delivering your shipment. So can a customer file, like going to at least the essential claim, quick claim, and regular claim piece, can a customer file more than one claim if they are within their claim window?
Yes, both for the quick or the essential items claims. Those could be done if other items are discovered to be damaged. They still have the timeline requirements, obviously, for those. The same is true for all your DPS claims too. Customers are allowed to file more than one claim. DPS certainly supports that functionality. I will say though that it's best to file everything at once, especially if there is going to be an inspection required, only because you want to make sure that everything is covered during that inspection appointment, especially if you're going to have to take time off of work to do that. It's not necessary, it's not required, but it certainly is within the customer's best interest to do that. But if you have minor damage loss that you want to file right away, and then wait to file the other stuff until later once it's discovered, that's also perfectly okay.
Yeah, no, that's great information. We always get that question multiple times throughout the year is, I already submitted a claim and we just unpacked some more stuff that I thought would be okay and found more damage. Can we either add to it or create another claim? I always say to try to unpack everything before filing your claim, because then you only have to manage and track one claim instead of multiple different, just kind of help make that a little bit easier on everybody's side. So there are several different things that families need to know about handling claims, such as like the internal damage rules and the exclusions of liability. Can you walk through and explain some of the other things that families should know about that part of the claims process?
Sure. So as I think most folks may be aware, the TSPs and the MCO community operate under U.S. Transcom's DPS claims and liability business rules. And the last year's business rules, they changed the internal damage rule to what they call burden of proof. And so what that essentially means is that when the TSP comes to the customer's house, then the TSP and the customer must verify the working conditions of appliances and other electrical items. So once they do that, then the assumption is going to be that those items were in good working condition when they were moved. So if the customer, for whatever reason, decides not to go through the working condition of items, then the customer, the burden of proof is on the customer when they go to file their claim that the television, the toaster, the whatever the electrical item is or whatever the appliance is, was damaged as a result of the move. So there's that extra little burden of proof required.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We see that question pop up quite a bit too, with the internal damage rule of, something worked previously not. If a customer has a video of like their Xbox or PlayStation working prior to the move, does that help show that burden of proof, or does it require an inspection by somebody?
Well, I think it can certainly help the customer. But I mean, I think the 100% sure way is to have an inspection done by, a professional that's in the business of repairing and inspecting those electrical items.
Okay.
And,
Um,
and I was just going to say too, I mean, I know how busy it can get on moving day. My wife and 3 daughters did it a lot of times while I was PDY deployed. And it can be almost impossible to follow people around while they're in your house packing. But if you can, like my wife would get neighbors to help out watch the kids while she was going through the house. And I think the more that service members focus on what's going on during pack out and make sure that they're making sure that their items do work. They show the packers coming in that, hey, yeah, this item does work. They can annotate it then at that point. And also to take a look at the inventory to make sure that what's on the inventory is an actual depiction of your property.
Yeah, the inventory is, we've talked about that in a couple other shows as well, just how important that inventory is, because when you sign it, you're agreeing to what's on it. And so if you need to discuss something with, the packer or the driver or whoever it is that created it, that's the time to do it before you sign it, so you can be able to maybe correct, adjust, or make notes on it to any disagreements or other things that you want to have listed on there as well. Put brands on things instead of having it just listed as a couch. So that way it's covered specifically under something. So that kind of leads into our next question about the high value form specifically, though. So how important is that high value form? And what about like the boxes or even the crates being sealed at origin versus not sealed at origin? And how does all of that kind of come into play with the claims as well?
Well, that's a great segue. So I'll speak to the high risk, high value inventory, and it is an inventory. I mean, it's not just a form; it's another inventory. And so what that's used for is any items that you have that are, collectible items, that may be rare items, that maybe something that's highly pilferable, like currency, coins, jewelry. Although I'll tell you, in our PCSs, we hand carried those items. We hand carried the coins, the jewelry, the currency. So there's that special inventory, high value inventory, and so what the member does in concert with the TSP, with the packers that are there at residence, is the TSP will ask the member, hey, do you have anything that you think is high risk or high value? Yes, I do. So the TSP will break out the form, and you'll start annotating on the form what that item is. And so then that form is executed, just like the other inventory, with your name and date, and the TSP will also annotate, their signature and the date on that form as well. So then when you get to destination, it's very, very, very important. I mean, if you're going to waive unpacking at destination, don't waive any unpacking of anything in the high risk, high value, because you have to go through with the TSP, unpack those boxes, and make sure that the items that are on that inventory showed up at destination. And then so the high risk, high value inventory has specific language on it. The text is supposed to be in bold so that the member can read clearly what's being said on it. And then the member and the TSP both execute that high risk, high value inventory, annotating that these items were received, or maybe something wasn't received.
Yeah, it's right there, right above the signature box, in bright, bold red letters of what it is. We always tell people, that you have to open your high value items on the day that delivery happens. If you don't, and you go back and you find, some of your china that was on the high value list is broken or damaged and chipped in some way, you can't make the claim on it because you kind of waived it when you signed that form, right?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, though, the damage itself actually isn't limited by that form, only the missing. So if the form has been executed correctly and there's requirements as far as initials, signatures, requirements that the boxes were actually done. It's the missing items that end up getting limited. So you can't claim later with either the TSP or the MCO that the item is missing. If you determine that the item is damaged, those items still can be claimed as damaged. So I just want to make sure that that gets clarified.
Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, no, definitely. We've got a couple questions in the comments that's talking about high value and just inventory stuff in general I want to get to real quick. So the first one from Chris here, that a lot of members are moving expensive shoe collections like Jordans, and we've seen this in some of our groups as well, that seem to go missing. Sometimes the shoe boxes show up, but they show up empty when they were packed previously. Should those be on the high value list rules as well? And also should add in like Legos are seen missing as well. Should those types of items be listed on a high value inventory?
Certainly Jordans, Legos, it probably depends on the level of collection and age. People have Legos for their kids, but also some service members have ones from when they were kids that are not necessarily available and might actually end up being of a collectible value, but you do have to make sure that that is documented prior to your move. For Jordans, certainly, if they're not on the high value form, you are going to be limited into what you are able to get compensated for if they're not on the high value. And when you put them on there, don't just write collection of Jordans. Do be specific as to what exactly is in there. I mean, it is the service member's properties. You want to make sure that it's fully documented. Those are of high value, some of them. So make sure that you are itemizing that on your high value. And multiple pages of that high value form can be provided so that you can indicate everything.
Okay. Is it something where, like, say I have a collection of 22 Jordan shoes. I don't, by the way, my friends watching that know I love shoes, I don't have 22 Jordans, but say I did for this instance. If I just wrote on there, you said don't do, Jordan shoe collection. A lot of times we see a lot of families that would write like shoe collection, 22 pairs, by item list can be provided. Would that suffice? And I can be able to, if you ask for, I can give you my detailed inventory list that gives size, color, model, all of that? Or do I need to, on the high value, write, one pair of red size 12 model number Jordan shoes, one pair yellow size 6 model number? Like, what would be the best way to kind of have that done?
Best is to put it on the form, but if there is an attachment that you already have as a service member and you want to provide that to your agent that's packing you and say, see attached, as long as they have a copy of that document, that's fine. If they don't have a copy of the document, that's when things get tricky. When was that submitted? Where was it documented? Because the TSP should be also afforded the opportunity to verify the presence of the goods in the manner of which it's being annotated on the high value form. So you want to give both the customer but also the TSP that opportunity to correctly verify that information.
Would it also work, say, if I had like my itemized inventory of my 22 Jordan shoes, but I had it like electronically in a Google form? Is it something where I could just like maybe email it to my TSP and say this goes to the high value inventory for this line item number? Would that help, or does it need to be a printed hard copy that goes with the high value inventory as it moves?
It should go in a paper copy format. If you want to try to email it before, where your TSP or customer service representative can pass that along to the agent, that way they can actually verify. But if the agent is the one present, you have packers that are there, that's not your TSP. They need to be able to correctly verify that what you're saying you have is actually what you have.
Okay.
So I would suggest providing them a copy of it as well.
Okay. And we got a good question here from Destin. Would it be good to have serial numbers, I assume, for like electronics and appliances on the list, as well as brands for those items?
So those are supposed to be listed on the inventory with your inventory serial numbers. I will say though, serial numbers aren't as helpful in the claims process as model information is. So if you're going to list one, I would suggest listing both. Because the model information will certainly help your TSP know how to provide you an accurate replacement cost for that item. If they don't have that, it's a little bit hard. Samsung has a bunch of TVs at various different sizes, but they're all not created equal, and we understand that. But if we don't know what you have, you might get at least an initial offer of something other than that, because we don't have the model information to be able to confirm the claimed amount.
No, absolutely. We see a lot of times where families are trying to navigate their claims, and for items like a couch or a bed frame, and being descriptive with it not just being a king size bed frame, but the material of it or the brand of it, to be able to help find that similar or like item, and not just well, here's what Amazon gives me for a replacement. But if it's a specific brand that you had, it gets you a little bit closer to what the replacement could be. What about like with the sealing of crates at the residence versus having it done at a warehouse? If I'm having a crated shipment and it's not being sealed in front of me at my residence, how does that kind of come into play with the claims if something shows up missing?
So for sealed cartons or crates, you certainly want to provide documentation to support that there was tampering with either the crate or the carton. It's not the end all be all on as far as being able to file a claim or even receive payment on that. But certainly documentation of those things definitely helps support the claim. Some crated shipments are crated code shipments. They're required to be crated at residence. Your code D code 1 shipments, those are up to the TSP on how to move those. So some end up getting crated and freighted at the choice of the TSP, but aren't required to be crated at residence. Just like with any other shipment, though, if it's being picked up by any party, crated or not crated, there's an inventory done to account for that, and there's a destination checkoff that you can perform to ensure that your property is actually received at destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a question here from Sky about the information. Is it for domestic, international, or both? It's for both. It's for all types of shipments, Sky. The crating shipments, though, you'll see is mostly OCONUS because that's how they get prioritized for crating shipments. But all the information about how to navigate your claims that we've talked about, the inventories, all of that is for all types of shipments of how things should be done and how to be best prepared for that. So what can customers do to help make the claims process smooth and easy when they're going through it?
As JD kind of mentioned earlier, making sure that you're paying attention to your inventory to make sure that your items are being documented and that any pre-existing damage is being annotated correctly. If you do see issues with that, certainly bring that to the attention of your TSP. You can also make notes in the remarks section. Some customers don't always know the damage, so they're not really paying attention to that. But once you bring items into a new home with new lighting, without other things around them, sometimes you might not have seen the damage that is being annotated. So certainly your TSP could bring that to your attention. Also just making sure that, as much documentation that can be provided with your claim is going to make sure that you get a fair and reasonable settlement offer. Like you mentioned, if they don't tell us what kind of bed it was or what kind of dresser it was, it's a little bit difficult to us. We're expert Google searchers. We do it all day, every day. I like to think of them as shopping experts. So we do our best to try to find something that is visually comparable, but without the model information or knowing that it's one thing versus another, you may end up getting an initial offer anyway, of something less. But if you can provide that documentation when you file your claim, any photos, any replacement manufacturer information, sometimes that really does go a long way in helping the process. It's not required, but during the claims process, it is going to be required. So it's not a requirement for filing, but it certainly is as far as the adjudication process goes. So the more information you can provide up front, the better.
So we have some questions that happen in our group sometimes about appraisals and customers getting appraisals for items before their move. What type of items would you suggest should be appraised before somebody moves to be able to have that documentation of that item's value prior to it being relocated?
Well, items such as antiques, that would be helpful. Objects of art. A lot of folks, when you go overseas, you pick up different sorts of artsy objects that you wouldn't necessarily get here in the States. So if you're able to get that on an insurance rider or have an appraisal done by a certified appraisal company, that would certainly be very helpful. I know when I was working on the MCO side, appraisals gotten after the fact, after the item's removed, after the claim was filed, didn't really care, didn't carry a lot of weight. But if you have something beforehand showing the value of the item that's been appraised, that can be very helpful.
Okay. And with appraisals, does it make a difference whether it's an in-person appraisal of somebody coming to the home to look at something versus an online appraisal where we send in like 20 million pictures of the item from all different angles to an online company to send an appraisal?
I can't really say on the TSP side because I'm fairly new working with TMM, but I can tell you on the MCO side, there are certain cases where we had to have online appraisals or emailed appraisals just because of where the person was located. It might be somewhere up in northern Alaska, and so they would email an appraisal firm. And I can think of a couple of specific cases where we did accept those just because of the circumstances.
Okay, that's good to know because we get that along with what should be appraised, when should it be appraised, how often do you need to have something appraised comes with it, like does it have to be an in-person thing or can I use an online reputable company? We had a question on a previous show, and Dustin, who's watching, I think it was your question about claims when things need to be remediated, either for mold or for bugs or some other issue that could be there. So what is that process like during the claims if something needs to be remediated?
Sure. So the TSP industry follows the U.S. Transcom claims liability business rules. They have very specific rules when it comes to mold remediation. And so, essentially when mold is discovered at residence, the TSP who moved the household goods is responsible for contacting a mold remediation firm and having an estimate done, an inspection estimate done of what it's going to could cost to remediate those goods. And then once that estimate is done, then it's sent to the customer, it's sent to US Transcom, and where else, Kira? MCO? MCO doesn't get a copy at that point.
Yep.
They do. Thank you. So anyway, and then so the member, the MCO, then once they get a copy of it, they make the decision of whether remediation is appropriate or not. And once remediation is accomplished, then the member has 3 days to go inspect and take a look at and make sure that those items were in fact remediated. Now, there may be some items that can't be remediated. They may be unsalvageable. And so the remediation firm will make, as part of the estimate, a list of salvageable and unsalvageable items. And and then so if it turns out that there were some unsalvageable items that could not be remediated, but maybe they have special or sentimental value, to the soldier, to the airman, to the sailor, to the Marine, and they're given the opportunity to be able to go to the warehouse wherever the items were inspected and remediated. Could be some remediation firm to pull those items out so that they can take those items with them.
Yeah. So this kind of goes in line with Dustin here. Can you be there for the remediation? But I think you said it's after they go through and sort and remediate is when the customer can be there to sort through the other items then?
For those items, right, that can't be remediated, that they're not salvageable.
Okay. And then, so I know this becomes a very heavy topic, at least on the industry side. I know that comes up frequently is about fraudulent claims and how those kind of get handled. So can you explain a little bit more about fraudulent claims, how you guys address those issues and kind of what happens with that?
Sure. Unfortunately, the fraudulent claims do come up. It's what unfortunately kind of ends up complicating the process for some service members that are filing honest, documented claims. Sometimes those are against just the TSP. If you transfer to the MCO, you are also technically filing a fraudulent claim against the government. And so there is a bit of difference on the way that those can end up getting handled. We've seen recently, at least in my office, some examples where members are claiming missing items when there was actually a partial delivery which included those items. Or in some cases, there's a subsequent delivery after the claim is filed, and then those members still accept payment for those items, even though they actually did receive the goods. There are also claimants that file identical damage from a previous move. So because of the way that the move managers are set up, there is access to a multitude of different carriers for each carrier and move management group, as well as the claims history for those. And also the MCOs have access to all of the claims history for those service members as well. So when there's identical damage and they can't provide information to support that damage was repaired or is somehow different, a leg can break twice, certainly, or you can have a crack in the top of something and then you can have a broken leg. So if there's different damage, that's certainly new damage to an item that requires compensation under the business rules, but not for the same damage unless you can provide some documentation to support that actually was repaired prior. So it's important to remember that information is out there, is available to the TSPs, and it certainly helps all of the service members if we keep the claims honest and legitimate. In cases where there is a fraudulent file claim, there can be civil suit action against the customer if we are able to prove that there was actually a fraudulent claim. That would be done by the TSP. If the items get transferred to the MCO and also are found to be fraudulent, we've had different branches reaching out to the commanding officer. We've had circumstances in the past where there's been more severe issues where it's gone up the way to a court martial, and removal of that service member from the military because that was filed also, like I said, against the government. So it does depend on which way it gets handled. But if you do file a portion of your claim is fraudulent and we are able to prove that it is fraudulent, it's kind of like fruit to the poisonous tree. Unfortunately, that whole claim can end up having the potential of being denied because part of it was fraudulent. And we've certainly found items for claims for members where they filed an exorbitant amount for a missing carton. That carton is later found and delivered, and the contents of those are documented, and it's nothing at all compared to what the service members have claimed. And so we've ended up denying those entire claims as a result of there being a partial fraudulent. So again, it's just really important that claims are documented, supported, and honest and truthful. It just helps the whole process for everybody.
Yep.
No, absolutely.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, from the TSP side, from Kira speaking, she's got way more experience on the TSP side than I do. But I can tell you on the MCO side, the MCOs take it seriously as well. And like Kira said, we've got claims history. And then so, once it goes to the commander and potential, referral and referral of charges, which we, on the Air Force side, went through this a couple of years ago where a lieutenant colonel with 18 years of service lost it all. And it's just sad for the family. So it is taken seriously, and it's, if it were just a mistake, and it's looked at pretty closely. If it were just a mistake, that's one thing. But proven fraud is another thing entirely. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's a good differentiation between a maybe miscommunication or accidental of something versus intentional fraud. I will tell you, we had at one point, we have in our bedroom, our nightstands, they're absolutely identical. We had a little damage on one of the legs during one of our moves, and I had wrote it down on the page that me and my husband had going, our running sheet for that day as stuff was being unloaded. And I was dealing with stuff outside. As it came off the truck, he was handling stuff inside. And so we both saw the damage and thought it was on different nightstands. And so we claimed damage on both nightstands. And then when the inspector came out and we were looking at the damage more closely, we could only find the damage on the one. And so we were able to say, like, no, it was only on one. We, didn't verify that before submitting our claim. But there is some differential between that accidental that happens versus intentional and trying to do that. And we've seen that in some of the groups as well. We've seen that with the DoD, where we've talked and discussed with them versus that intentional, and not just with claims with our TSPs, but also like on PPMs, people trying to pad their weight with different things to get that full weight at their destination before, moving and trying to go somewhere. So as we always say, it only takes one bad apple to kind of ruin something for everybody. And as much as we complain about the regulations and things that happen, they are there for a reason, and they are there to help kind of make it fair and even. And when we see things like this happen, unfortunately, we end up with more regulations and more rules and tighter restrictions and all the things that we don't really want to have to deal with. So it's, just trying to keep people truthful and honest with it and what it is. I know I want to add into here one question, because it kind of falls within this realm a little bit, that we saw that somebody, they had, I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was some type of shop equipment, like I don't know all the technical terms. It was some sort of saw, something, grinder, something that they did in their home shop that they did woodworking or something, that it was damaged on one move. And then they were able to get replacement value for it. And so they replaced it with the exact same saw because they liked the quality, they liked the saw. Got a little bit damaged, I think, in a different way on a different move, or it might have been very similar damage on a different move. And they had trouble on that second move being able to claim it, because the TSP was like, well, you already got paid for it before. We're not paying you again. And going through that process of trying to prove to them that it's not the same, like we replaced it with the same. How does that kind of piece work if somebody replaces something with the exact same item and then it gets damaged again in a future move?
Well, I mean, I'm a tool guy. I like tools. The tools I like, I continue, when I wear one out, I'll buy the same type. And so what you can do is you can provide a receipt of the newer item, the tool that you replaced. Just provide a receipt. It'll have a date, price on it. If you can't provide a receipt, then maybe you have a credit card statement or a debit, from your account. Maybe a screenshot of where you purchased the item, which you said you purchased it for. That can be helpful.
Yeah. So no, that's good information there, because usually a lot of places nowadays, you go back, if you have the same card, they can be able to look in their system and be able to look things up. So I'm just checking the comments here really quick to see if there's any other questions that we didn't get to yet. And I don't think so. I think we got to all of them. Or other folks have been able to answer them in the comments as well. So I just want to thank both of you today for taking time out on your busy schedules. I know working with everything to be here and to help educate our community some on how the claims work, the different types, what we need to know about them so we can be better prepared for this upcoming PCS season. So again, thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody else watching, we hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, great rest of the week, and join us again right here next Wednesday for another show to help you be prepared for your upcoming PCS. Until then, we'll see you later.